Good morning, everybody. Here we are with a video that I haven't done in a long time, a versus video. So I thought long and hard about how to actually come back to versus videos, and clearly here on my channel we have content that is fairly popular, day ones and week one, so I thought, you know what, why not apply that to the concept of a versus video. I am going to use this phone, this one right here is the Galaxy Z Flip 5, and I am going to use it for an entire day and just sort of talk about my experience with it, but I will chime in over at the office with some thoughts in general about the two phones. So what I'm going to do is today I'll be heading to San Francisco with this phone, and then when I come back tomorrow after my meetings and whatnot, I'll be using the Moto RAZR Plus. Top tip, if you are living in Los Angeles and you're not too far away from Ontario Airport, definitely use this over LAX. Look at this, there's like nobody here. All right, made it into the room. It's officially lunchtime now, so we're kind of in the mid portion of the day. And considering that I was listening to the YouTube videos that I downloaded and whatnot and watching a couple of them throughout the entire flight, which was only like an hour, I am down to 70% at this point. 70% at this time though, it's almost 1 p.m., is not too bad, especially considering the fact that I'm going to be in meetings. I shouldn't necessarily be on my phone a whole lot. I'm pretty much expecting this phone to get to the end of the day without too many issues. Obviously, one of the main reasons why I really enjoy these flip phones that have big screens on the cover is because I do vlogging content quite a bit. As a content creator, having a viewfinder is kind of paramount. Oh, and one last thing I want to mention is that no, I have not really customized the Galaxy Z Flip 5 a whole lot, including on the flex window, where there is a lot of room to customize the colors, maybe put a wallpaper or some pictures on there. And obviously there are a lot of other ways to customize a smartphone, and that's why the Casetify case that I have on here, customized with my initials on the back, that's just honestly already making me feel like this phone definitely feels like my own. Actually, I just showed it off, so let me just pop in here and talk about the sponsor of this video, Casetify. You'll be seeing their cases on the Galaxy Z Flip 5 during this video, and honestly, I'm really enjoying them. And not just because this one is customized with my initials on it. Protection is still key for these cases, as they feature 5-foot drop protection, meet military grade standards, and they have corner protection in particular via their Eco-Shock construction. But what really gets me about the Casetify cases is the vast catalog of available designs. There are just so many to choose from, so you can find something to really match your style. Or you can even just go custom and truly make the case your own. If you know me, green and yellow are my favorite colors, so I went for the yellow splash behind the customized initials, and then there's this green case that also says reset, which kind of makes sense because sometimes you just want to close the Galaxy Z Flip 5 and disconnect for a while. Of course, you can always go for a clear case if you still want the Casetify protection while keeping things pretty simple. Especially for the Galaxy Z Flip 5, a good case needs to protect not only the entire phone, but still have enough room to show off the brand new flex window cover screen. One detail I really appreciate is that the case comes in one piece. Usually you have two parts to a Galaxy Z Flip case that requires a little bit of adhesive on the inner parts, but instead here the two halves are connected and they use no adhesive, making changing among them much easier. And Casetify is dedicated to sustainability with their Recasetify program, where you can send your old cases in so that they can be recycled and made into new ones, creating a loop that helps keep phones stylish while reducing overall waste. And you can see right here on the side of the phone that this one was indeed made from recycled phone cases. Overall, cases from Casetify can just be a great option for elevating the style of your Galaxy Z Flip 5 or plenty of other devices. So check out the links in the description and in the pinned comment below to find your next phone case from Casetify. And thanks again to Casetify for sponsoring this video. Yeah, the lenses on the Galaxy Z Flip 5 are just wider, both of them. And you can see here, I'm at the 0.5 for both phones. But really, the experience hasn't been too surprising, aside of course from the flex window. When the phone is opened up, it still feels like the typical and good Samsung Galaxy experience, of course, considering whether or not you enjoy Samsung's One UI. Being able to check out certain applications, especially if you open them up in the Good Lock app and in the lab settings, means that you can just pop into any application and just make it so that you could use it for quick access or full access if that's what you choose to do. And as far as battery life is concerned, let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. I am down to 13%, and in all honesty, after I walked around the area, got some lunch like you saw earlier, and took a few pictures of Oracle Park, I was using the phone just to check notifications as I went to a couple of meetings today, and the phone basically stayed in my pocket. Again, compact because the phone can fold down and it doesn't take up too much room in the pocket. And it's because of the fact that it was in my pocket for a good portion of the evening that obviously my screen on time is not going to be super high. However, the phone clearly made it to the end of the day like I originally predicted. I have around 3 hours of screen on time, but overall on this charge, I have 13 and almost 14 hours of usage. And I would actually say that's pretty good considering that I use the phone pretty heavily, maybe a little bit above an average user. Tomorrow when I'm using the Moto RAZR Plus, I'll go ahead and give my thoughts on that particular phone as I'm using it throughout the travel day, and I'll also give some perspective as I compare it after using the Galaxy Z Flip 5 just the day before. Good morning. I slept longer than I had wanted to, but as they say, the show must go on. And today we are working with the Moto RAZR Plus. But before I even get to talking about this phone for today, let's go get some coffee first. Something a little bit different this morning. Got a chai latte. Actually, this is a dirty chai latte. So there's some chai in here with some espresso. So getting a bit of that caffeine boost after, let's just say, some of the drinking last night. So what's interesting about the RAZR Plus is that it was Moto's, let's say, coming out party when it came to jumping into the foldable game, especially here in the US, but by making a really big splash. And that splash is a full screen on the cover. It's still a very interesting and fun implementation. But speaking of fun, it just kind of feels like the RAZR Plus is trying to have more fun in general throughout the entire phone. And even just opening up the phone immediately, I can see that the font is just a little bit easier on the eyes. It's just more casual compared to the default font that's on the Galaxy Z Flip 5. But from the time that I have had with the Moto RAZR Plus already, the cover screen, while it's still quite functional, it also introduces a couple of little quirks, mainly the fact that it does come down to these cameras. And you can have some fun with it, like obviously with this particular wallpaper that is actually built into the phone. These are the binoculars, so you can have some fun with it if you get really creative. And like you saw earlier with Google Maps, there's a bit of continuity. When you have the phone open and you're using an app, closing it gives you a little prompt to continue using that app on the cover screen. Little touches like that are just nice, and it's not that you can't do that on the Galaxy Z Flip 5, it's just that Moto is trying to just add in those elements so that the experience can feel a little bit more seamless. Now today it's going to be a lot like yesterday. This time I'm just flying back home, but it's going to be the same deal. I will be using this phone and giving you my thoughts on it as the day goes on, and then I'll talk about battery life at the very end of the day when that time comes. I'm back in LA, and I wanted to give a few extra thoughts on the Moto RAZR Plus while I was on the flight. I was listening to a bunch of YouTube videos that I downloaded locally, and one thing I noticed is that with VLC in particular, it just doesn't really work on the cover display. Meanwhile, on the Galaxy Z Flip 5, it does work like perfectly. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's what I talk about when I talk about like the little levels of jank that might happen. Obviously, the cover display on the Moto RAZR Plus is trying to be basically like a full-on smartphone. There's just some applications that don't really work well on it. Quick battery update also. So I was obviously using the phone a little bit more since I was just passing the time in the airport and on the plane. I am down to 35%, and we're only at 3:40 p.m. at this point. Now, I know that the batteries in Flip foldables don't tend to be the larger, on the larger side, so I can kind of expect that, but you know, still, I'm getting around 2.5 hours of screen on time at the moment, and it could go for the the rest of the day if I wasn't going to use the phone a whole lot. But still, at 35%, that's still lower than what I was getting with the Galaxy Z Flip 5 at around this same time yesterday. Alright, so I did end up charging up the Moto RAZR Plus a little bit because we are here at the LA Zoo, checking out Brew at the Zoo. 40 breweries are here, and I'm going to do my best to get more camera samples between the two phones and give a couple more perspectives, but as you can hear, it's a little bit of a party, so why don't we just enjoy, and the Moto RAZR is still the phone I'll use for most of this time. I'm doing my best here. I'm doing what I can, but it's been a good time. And I've had like 6 of this tonight. After those couple of days, I do have plenty of thoughts. I do want to preface this by saying that it's been a long time since I've done a versus video, so please bear with me as I still figure out the best way for me to tackle this kind of content. Also, I've never really been one for scientific tests and whatnot on my channel, so I'll just be sharing my thoughts in general about these two phones and try to pontificate on who would benefit more from having the Flip versus the RAZR. I may not cover literally everything between these two, but hopefully my thoughts will give you a little bit of insight into these two Flip foldables. So, subscribe to my channel for more versus videos, and let me know any thoughts that you have in the comments downstairs. My first thought is that it's just great we have more choices in the US market for Flip foldables like this. The Moto RAZR Plus did beat Samsung to the punch when it comes to having a cover screen that spans way more of the surface area, and ultimately their implementation is quite good. I think I mentioned it a little bit during the RAZR day, but there are just a couple of quibbles that you do have to deal with on this particular phone. Undeniably, the fact that the cover screen spans past the camera modules is cool, but that also means that some elements of apps will literally get blocked by them. Moto has tried to mitigate this by making it so that the interface can render above the cameras if you hold on the Go Home bar here at the bottom. It's a small adjustment to make in order to make a small adjustment, but it's still an extra step that introduces a little bit of jank to the experience. On the topic of jank, I do have to say some apps were giving me problems on the RAZR screen as opposed to the flex window here on the Flip 5. I was traveling during those days and VLC had trouble working consistently at full screen for my downloaded videos. Even YouTube has some trouble going back and forth from full screen, and it literally happened as I was trying to film this video. Those little quibbles aside, there are plenty of reasons why you'd want to use the cover screen and keep this phone closed. Things like maps and timers, even checking my blood sugar all became easy to do at a quick glance. But that's all what you also get with the Galaxy implementation. The flex window may not cover the entire surface of this top part, but I think that's on par for what Samsung devices tend to do. They don't go full ham on certain features like this. Instead, they just run right up to the line, and then it's usually pretty effective enough. For my fellow Filipinos out there, it's like they go for the crispy pata rather than giving you the whole lechon. It's still delicious, but you're not getting the whole hog. But that also means that the experience has less potential jank. You can see this with the Labs feature. If I head over to it right now, apps allowed on the cover screen in Labs, there's just a very curated list of apps, a small number of apps that they know are going to work without any issues, and as you can see here, YouTube is one of them. I certainly wasn't having any of the same issues watching stuff on this cover display as compared to the RAZR. And of course, if you try hard enough, you can get basically any app to work on there via GoodLock's multi-star feature, and that's how I get apps like Dexcom to work on there for the aforementioned blood sugar readings. By the way, that also seems to change things a little bit in terms of the notifications. You can see here I have one of my blood sugar reading apps called Happy Bob there under the GoodLock launcher, and if I go over to the notification, I can tap on that, and it's actually going to open up the full application rather than just giving me a preview of the notification. But by and large, the general experience of using either cover display for the tasks that make the most sense is on par for either of these phones. You might want to weigh the benefits and pitfalls in either case. For example, you're going to have info without having to open the phone, but it's at the potential expense of having a new larger screen out here that can be cracked or scratched. What I will say is that while both the Flip and the RAZR certainly add this new layer to the smartphone paradigm, the RAZR just feels a little bit more fun because tinkering around and messing around with it just adds a bit of texture to the experience. It'll be up to you whether or not dealing with the little quibbles on the RAZR are annoying enough for you to pass on it, or it just makes the phone feel that much more unique and potentially more like yours. Which brings us to the general usability of these phones. High level thoughts, I think they both perform really well, with Samsung clearly showing that they've done this before. They're just adding more screen to the cover. The Galaxy Z Flip 5 also now completely closes flat, and that is a good thing, but other foldables have managed to do that already, including the Moto RAZR Plus. And on that note, build quality feels pretty much fine for me across the board, even with the fact that I'm always opening up the screen with my nail actually rubbing up on the inner display. And as far as just the looks are concerned, I do have these pretty standard colors for these. I do have the nice mint color on here, but it's the glossy look of both of these phones that are just not my personal preference when matte options are available. It's for that reason that I'll give Moto some credit for having a matted material for the back portion of the phone, although for the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 5, you also have this edition. You have a few special editions only available on their website that have matted materials pretty much all around the device, especially this yellow edition that my girlfriend just got, and I'm quite jealous that she has it. I mean, this is just so much my style. The main displays are both Full HD Plus high refresh rate displays, bringing the classic smartphone experience with a crease that we're just meant to get used to when using flexible displays. In all honesty, the creases don't really bother me anymore, but if you can't see past them, then you're probably not seeking out a foldable for the most part right now anyway. That said, the ability to fold down a phone and put it in a pocket is just a welcome returning experience that we've had thanks to flexible displays. One main takeaway from my time with these phones is that they actually help with a bit of a minimalist lifestyle. If I don't need to be on my phone for too long, I can actually feel less distracted because I literally keep these phones closed. Quick looks at certain info and apps on the cover display are one thing, but then it's a whole other decision to actually open things up and go full bore on the main screens. Performance between the two was also plenty on either phone, even if the Galaxy Z Flip 5 has a bit of an edge by having the overclocked Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy, while the RAZR Plus tries to manage price by going for the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Daily usage feels good across the board, and maybe just the Galaxy Z Flip 5 manages to go a little bit harder in scenarios like gaming. But I do have to give the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 a little bit more credit though, because despite having a very slightly smaller battery compared to the RAZR, the Flip was the one that managed to last longer during its day. That was just my experience, but over the time that I have used the Galaxy Z Flip 5 lately, I will say that I have rarely had to plug this one in too long before bed compared to the RAZR. What these phones do with all that hardware, however, is notable. You might see already that there's an always-on display available on the flex window of the Galaxy Z Flip 5. Meanwhile, here on the Moto display, you have to either double tap on the screen or actually hit the power button to turn this on. It's from there that you can go into the full interface. And the Galaxy Z Flip 5 boasts having a ton of features, but certainly it has more apps because it tries to have apps from across the Google and Samsung One UI ecosystems. It's for that reason that the RAZR just feels a little bit more convenient with its features. It's not too inundated with all of these other applications that you might expect the carrier or the manufacturer to have pre-installed on the phone. And even then, taking a bunch of pictures with both of these phones, there was the double press of the power button here on the Flip, but then the twisting motion of the RAZR was just as, if not a tiny bit more convenient, and certainly a little bit more fun and unique. The same thing goes for the Chop Chop feature, which turns on the flashlight, which I literally had to use a couple of times when I woke up in the middle of the night during my hotel stay. In a way, Moto just has a less overwhelming take on Android, with some Moto apps, but mostly practical features that are tangible and useful, but are mostly in the background until you actually trigger them. The best way that I can put it is that the Samsung experience is robust, but it is heavily curated, while the Moto, for the most part, is just trying to have some fun. Which brings us to the final bit, and that would be the cameras. Now for some, this is the make or break aspect, and it certainly holds a lot of weight for me. You've been seeing a lot of pictures and videos from both of these phones throughout this video, so let me know what you think in the comments. Personally, I have to commend Moto for making some leaps this past year in their cameras, putting a little bit more effort into their hardware and making some improvements in their processing. They're also the ones that are trying to have more fun. For example, if I turn on the camera with that twist gesture, we can go over to this more area, and there are just a couple of extra modes here that are pretty fun to use, like the spot color and the photo booth. In terms of sheer quality, however, I do think they have a little bit more work to do still. After all, Samsung has just had the same camera quality for some time now, and for most people, it works really well. They've hit a bit of a stride, and the quality of their photos and videos are simply preferred to me in this comparison. Simply put, if you've gravitated to Samsung camera quality in the past, you know exactly what to expect here. Now, to be fair, if you're a 1080p vertical video social media person, then propping up these phones and actually getting your vertical video done using all of these cameras, which all do record in 4K video, it's just going to be exactly what you need. It's just that the quality of the Galaxy Z Flip 5 makes it the one that I'd often have in my pocket or my bag more often. Detailed 4K video, good depth of field from the main sensor, and even the expected Samsung saturation, or just my preference. Now, I don't want to go too deep into the camera stuff after dedicating literally half of this video to vlogging with both of these phones. After all, there are many of you in my comments who say that the camera is actually one of the least important aspects to buying a smartphone, so I don't want to inundate you with too much of that. I'll just keep it at high-level thoughts here, and you can let me know which camera you would prefer. And so, there you have it. The great flip-off. I figured this would be a pretty good time to bring back versus videos because we now finally have actual competitors to Samsung's Galaxy Z Flip line in the form, for now, of the Moto RAZR Plus. Both phones are trying to do a ton, it's just their approaches that really differentiate them. And like with most versus videos, I don't think there's always going to be a clear winner here. Instead, it's about what matters to you. I think the Moto RAZR Plus is a bit more experimental in some aspects, while maintaining really practical features and the type of performance befitting of a daily driver. It just manages to feel a little bit more fun with that combination. Meanwhile, the Galaxy Z Flip 5 is everything we already know Samsung can do. It's measured, somewhat curated, and ultimately it's an experience that has very few hurdles to deal with on the daily. It's really the cameras that make the Galaxy Z Flip 5 a bit more desired for me, but that's just me. How do you feel about these foldable flip phones? Let me know in the comments downstairs and subscribe to my channel as I figure out my way of tackling these versus videos. One more shout out to Casetify for sponsoring this video. Their cases have been wonderful for adding to the experience of the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 5. So make sure you check them out in the links that are in the description and in the pinned comment below. But from there, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again today. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.